Really happy to see you guys here. I mean, it's a full house. And I actually see some familiar faces here and also new friends. It just shows how much enthusiasm the community has about using generative AI for UI and UX. So I think at our side, apparently we have tested some of the tools and we're very eager to share with you what's our impression of it, what are some learnings we have gleaned along the way. But as much as possible, we also want to hear from you guys. We want to make it more interactive as well, which is why we do have FAQ towards the end. If you have any questions, feel free to pop it in. And also, we don't assume that we have the answer to everything. So towards the end, hopefully we get to hear some of the input from you guys as well. So for today, quick run through of the agenda. We're gonna do a bit of introduction of AI. We want to demystify AI a bit as well, because I know some of us are pretty scared of what AI is capable of doing. And the meat of the presentation is actually the third section, where we're gonna go through the demo of a number of tools. And finally, it's gonna be the Q&A. And of course, important things are worth repeating twice. So we're gonna do a bit of intro of what PALO IT does, who we are as well, because then you know who are presenting here today. Basically, PALO IT is a global digital consultancy, which is big enough to deliver, small enough to care. So we do have offices across the globe. And Singapore is actually our biggest office. We are a team of 150 plus strong. And what we do, right, can be summarized in these two big circles. So the first one is really innovate and build. So here we really use design thinking a lot to figure out what is the right idea, what is the best product to build. And also we have the technical team to deliver that. And then the second circle is actually more focusing on scaling and transforming the organization, meaning we're not just building the product, right? We actually want to inculcate some of the best practice, the agile mindset to our clients so that maybe even when we're not around, they're able to continue to innovate and build great products themselves. And the lineup today, so I'm Wei Wei, I'm a UX design lead at PALO IT. We have our very talented Rebecca, who is our senior UX designer, and Jeremy, the wizard of data and AI. So really, where is AI today? I think we have all read a lot about AI in the recent headlines. I think we know that AI is able to, give companies exponential growth. And that's also why we're here today, right? So if you just read a few of the headlines over here, by Financial Times, to be an industry leader in 5 years, you need a very clear and compelling generative AI strategy. So I don't think I need to harp on this too much. All of us here are quite excited to see what AI is able to do for us. But at the same time, there's that fear at the back of our head. It's like, okay, I get that AI is powerful, but would it take away our jobs? So hopefully we can agree on a few things first, right? So the first law of AI is that it will not eliminate jobs for UX designers. And the second law of AI is that UX designers who know how to incorporate AI into their work skillfully will replace UX designers who do not, because with AI we're always able to build faster, smarter, and hopefully it makes us more creative as well. So the best way of looking at AI is that they are our best sidekicks. By definition, they are tools, and tools, humans, we're able to leverage them to our benefit. So we don't necessarily need to be scared of them. And we also would like to present to you a slightly different perspective. So we want to use some of the cognitive science framework a little bit. If you think about human, what makes us human is probably this few layers. So at the bottom layer, we have our limbic brain, which basically regulates our survival instincts, like how we eat, our sleeping cycles, breathing, all that. Then at the second level, we have our rational brain. right? So the rational brain is what help us to do all the logical, analytical tasks, like mathematical problems, and also which university you want to go for. But on top of that, you also have your emotional brain. And the emotional brain, powerful as it is, it can sometimes even overtake our rational brain's decisions. I think we can all remember some instance where we let the emotion get the better part of us. And even going for upward, we have what we call self-identity. So that's what makes us uniquely human as well. We are able to have this sense of self-awareness. And finally, the top is man's search for meaning, right? So we all live for some meaning in the world. That's what we seek. And that corresponds to the self-actualization layer for human. And if you try to superimpose this for AI, what is AI able to do in this pyramid? Well, if you look at the very bottom layer, it definitely doesn't have any limbic brain. It just needs maybe electricity and Wi-Fi for it to survive. And everything AI is skilled at doing falls under the second layer, which is the rational brain. As far as I understand, I think like generative AI, it's just taking like a large amount of database, detecting the patterns, and then it's able to also generate something that's of similar characteristic, right? So all of that is by using analytical and also like mathematical modeling, but it doesn't have any emotions, let alone to have any self-awareness or knowing what is meaningful for human or meaningful for itself. So from that angle, yes, it is a very powerful tool for us to use for the second layer kind of problems. But when it comes to solving complex problems, especially that involves UX designers, empathy is such a key ingredient. And you need to have that emotional aspect, and you need to be able to deeply connect with your users, your audience, in order to create a truly helpful product. So that's why we believe that, you know, AI, it's no rival for us, at least at this point, in terms of designing those solutions. And what it could help us a lot is in automating the mundane task and leaving more room for creativity to us designers. So just a few examples, and I think we are probably all very familiar with this. Like it can help us move faster. Basically, in the past, if you want to generate certain copy, right, you need to think about it, but now ChatGPT can do it in seconds. That also means that you're able to create more in the same amount of time. One thing I particularly like about AI is that it prompts inspiration, meaning that when I'm stuck sometimes or I'm just not sure where to start, I can always go to AI and then it's able to come up with some simple solutions in the beginning. And even though it's not perfect, but it's always something I can build upon, and I can also always take some, you know, valuable things from the solution and then iterate on the basis of that. So it's really a great springboard for inspiration. And let's look at the flip side of this, which is the challenges and imperfections of AI. Lack of context is a big one. So I'll give you an example. Like when we do user testing, we know that the user is operating in a certain context. But when you use AI tools to like analyze the findings or whatever, sometimes it will give you recommendation that's like totally out of nowhere. So it does make a mistake. Like that's basically lack of context. Also, you have a relatively high interaction cost in the sense that sometimes you need to input a lot of information to the AI before it can start generating things of value, of relevance to you. So that's a bit of a cost at the beginning. Then this also like links to the third point, which is the limited AI proficiency. If you want to get valuable output from AI, you kind of need to learn how to do prompts. That's why like prompt engineering now is all the rage as well. So if you lack that kind of proficiency, if you couldn't prompt AI in the right way, then it's pretty much like garbage in, garbage out. And finally, the ethical consideration is also a big part. We know that a lot of big organizations, when they started utilizing AI tools, the first thing they ask is, how about the privacy side, right? How about my data security? Am I making sure that my data is not being leaked to other entities? And I think that's really just scratching the surface, because when it comes to utilizing AI, there are a lot more ethical implication than what we can talk about over here. So just to give you guys some food for thought first. All right. So now we're at the stage where we can talk a little bit about the tools we have tested. And from a UI UX design perspective, we know that it's this journey we're on, right? We always start with discovery first, and then there will be like a define phase. Then finally, we design and deliver. So for each of the stage, we have identified a few tools that we're going to walk you through. So for discover, we have Perplexity AI and synthetic users. Define, we have Notably and user evaluation, both research tools. And finally, we have within Figma, there is something called Jambot and UISR. Finally, an in-house tool we have built and used ourselves called Story Spinner. Right. So when it comes to the discovery phase, we often start with desktop research. So I just want to get a feel from the crowd. How many of you have heard of Perplexity AI already? If you have heard of it, can give a show of hands. Right, interesting. So it looks like this one is pretty new to a lot of you guys. And I'll be honest, like as much as I like using ChatGPT for desktop research, I prefer to use this sometimes because it has a killer feature, which is a credible source. Let me just show you guys quickly. I thought it's swiping this way, right? Okay. Cool. Yep. So for this tool, actually, you guys can just use your phone and start testing it if you want, because the cool thing about this app is it doesn't require any login credentials. You can use it straight away, right? Sure. So maybe let me show you guys straight away what it how it works. The angle I'm coming in is, let's say I'm developing a mental wellness app. So I just want to know what are some of the most popular mental wellness apps in Singapore. So as it generates the answer, you can see that it actually highlights the sources, and then it actually tells you where exactly it gets the conclusion from. So when I want to dig further into what's the source and is it really credible, then this gives me a very good entry point. Yeah. So you can see that, oh, we have intellect, mindfi, mindline, and also there will be like related kind of questions that if you want to explore further, then it will straight away give you that. So that's what I like about Perplexity AI. Now let's move on to the next one. The next one is very interesting from a conceptual kind of a standpoint. So I think I'll just go straight into the demo. If you look at their website, you look at their pitch line, it's almost a bit unsettling because it says user research without the users. And all your users are actually synthetic, which means they're powered by the AI. And they say that the synthetic users provide you with organic insights. So it does give you sort of the profile of the persona. And then if you want to test a product idea, a solution, it will give you rating, it will give you feedback, things like that. So it's very popular, or at least the owner wants to position this product for testing desirability of new product, particularly. So in the beginning, they are only focusing on this space, like how does my product fare? Are people wanting this product? What are some of the risks associated with it? So it's very much in the testing of desirability space. But now when I look at their site again, because I started testing them, I would say last year, November, they have added a lot of features. So I'm quite impressed with the speed that they iterate. And now if you look at their feature, it has the solution feedback interview, which is what they started with. Like you have your audience, you have your problem defined, and you have your solutions. And now they also have something called the problem exploration interview. Means that you do not necessarily have a solution. You just put your audience out there. You might have identified a few pain points, and it's just to help you explore the problem space a little bit more, like diving a bit deeper into the pain points, the user journey, what could possibly be improved. And these features over here, I haven't used them so far, but the custom interview actually allows you to provide an interview script yourself. But most of the time I'm lazy and it's an AI tool, so I don't want to provide my own script, because all the features over here already allow you to run the interview, and the script is actually also generated by the tool itself. So let's say that we continue with the mental wellness app idea, right? So I'm targeting stressed youth in Singapore who are affected by academic pressure. Then the problems we have identified, let's say, they do not have strong social support network. Maybe the self-care always gets deprioritized due to other requirements. And maybe, the caregivers also couldn't really attend to them that much. So that's the initial definition of the problem. You'll be able to choose a number of interviews, but let's just go straight into the interview itself. So again, all these features, it's something they recently developed. I don't see all of this when they first started. So there you go. They have generated 3 participants. And when you look at the name, the age, whatever, it actually looks quite legitimate. And when we tested it for different segments, the name generally, like the profile, everything seems to match up quite well. So it's pretty impressive. And then you'll be able to also see, what's their coping mechanism for stress, whether they're involved in any extracurricular activities, blah, blah, blah. You are able to add additional parameters if you want. You can also remove things if you want. But for the demo purpose, let's just run the interview. So you can also notice that even when everything is synthetic, they have this feedback over here as if they are inviting the interviewee and then thanking them at the end, which find it to be an interesting touch. So let's maybe start looking a bit at the first interviewee, right? So here you're able to see the user's basic profile. They also have a big 5 personality sort of a profiling chart. And then because they already provided the script, everything here is kind of like a summary of their response, tell us a little bit about yourself. This is how we usually start the interview. So it starts with description of oneself. And then they will talk about, what's the problem? So the person will say, currently I'm grappling with a few significant challenge. Foremost challenge is managing the intense academic pressure, etc. So as you go further, you will also ask for more detailed things like what's a recent experience or incident, and then what's the emotional impact, the importance of solution for you, how important, and then how do you currently actually solve your problem. And, zooming in a little bit, but and then the additional challenges, if I have a solution preference, what would it be? Yeah, so as you can see, immediately you have the feedback from a few different users, and you are even able to generate a summary, I think. So once you have finished kind of like looking through the individual responses, when you click on summary, then it's supposed to give you like a really high level executive summary and what are the patterns they have identified. So yeah, so I guess I wouldn't go through everything. The key takeaway when I was exploring this tool is that first, I think it's a very good user-centric view of the problem, because a lot of times when we started talking to a client, they will start telling us what features they want or describing the problem, but it's not always from a user's angle. But with this, I can at least wear the user's hat because everything they describe is from the very personal angle. And the second thing I like is I can pick some of the response, like key insights over there. I can probably weave it into my interview script. So I wouldn't rely on this for my actual user interview because I believe that at this point, it's still very, very important for us to talk to our end users and test out whatever solution we have in real life. But this one, again, it's like a first cut and it gives you enough things to start running your study. So it kind of accelerates the process. The downside is sometimes I do feel that some of the response seems a bit generic. So you probably don't get as rich an experience as talking to a real user. That's one. And secondly, it could be buggy. But I think this one kind of applies to all the AI tools. So one of the challenges we didn't really mention in the slide just now, but one of the challenge and imperfection of using an AI tool is you never know when it will break down. So sometimes, it spins forever, but it doesn't load you the full response, or sometimes you just cannot connect to the AI tool. So that's the inherent aspect when we work with technical solutions. So with that, I'm gonna pass to Rebecca.
Thanks, Wei. Okay, so now we sort of covered the discovery phase. We're going to go into the defining phase. So hopefully you've done your user research with real users and not synthetic users. So right here, we'll be able to look at some research tools that we've been testing with. So just to quickly introduce you to them, not sure how many of y'all have heard of it. It's called Notably. It's quite similar to, I think more people have heard of Dovetail. So it's very similar to Dovetail. And it's a great end-to-end research tool, right? You can use it as a research repository. But for the AI killer features, I would say that it gives like great quick summaries, and it's also able to kind of give you thematic insights from your synthesis. So just gonna hop over to the tool right now. Okay. Okay, so this is what you'll see. We've sort of created a one with a mock data because we don't want to show you, confidential stuff that goes on in interviews. So this is sort of like what you see with your project. You can see that I've already gone and uploaded all my user interview recordings. It's also a great place to, park your desk research. So what is great is you can upload kind of any like article or text document, and it can give you an AI summary on that too, which is great. And you can like sort of layer that onto your user interview insights. Okay, so I'm just going to pop into one of the interviews. Okay, and you can see I've already preloaded my interview recording. And what this does is while it's sort of like loading your video, it's going to give you a very quick transcript over here, which if you have used Otter AI, it's very similar to that. It just gives you a good transcription. And besides that, if you want additional layers of maybe what AI can give you, you can go ahead and click on this magic button. And what I'll do is essentially kind of based on your transcript, give you some of the insights that it's able to find. And you can do so with a few of the templates that they have here. So because it's a discovery piece, I'm just going to go ahead and generate something for a discovery interview. It's going to outline some of the challenges, your goals, any surprising takeaways, and patterns from that. So I already have done it pre-generated. So you can see here, it kind of gives you an overview of like, hey, who is this user you're talking to? A bit of the challenges, the goals, any like surprising takeaways, and even the key moments like quotes that you want to lift off and put into like your research presentation. This is always great, as we know. So how it works is you simply have to go and highlight some of these important pieces of information that you want to sort of put into your synthesis. You can see here that it comes up here, and what I can do is I can also add tags to it, right? So if perhaps the thing I'm looking at, it's around the topic of safety, but there's also like the sentiments or feelings from the user is the user can feel anxious, or perhaps it's a pain point. All of those tags will come in really helpful when you sort of port it over to do your analysis. So once I'm done with sort of highlighting all the important information I want, and I want to lift off this, I can simply go to add these highlights to my analysis board. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I've already done that. Just click this button here. And if I pop over to hold on, that was not supposed to happen. Okay. So this is a preview of what you might get after you've done like all your tags and stuff. It's very similar to if like you do your synthesis and affinity mapping on Miro. It's that same interface. I like that you can also add in like your secondary research stuff in here. And you can kind of visualize it as per like, maybe this is like a journey map of what your user goes through. And then you can sort of see the like thematic clusters that we have here based on the stickies that you have. If I open this is going to be a drawer that shows me all of whatever I've highlighted. You can also see it's tagged to the participants. You can always go back to the source videos or your source notes. And another good thing is then you can kind of also give it like tag it to a specific sentiment. Like for example, I see here that this user was having some frustration, so it's perhaps like a more negative sentiment. If I go back to my board, what's really cool is that currently it's colored by theme. I know some of us like to look at it from a participant's point of view. So you can actually color it by the participants, and you kind of get a like idea of like who said what and which demographic they belong to. And yeah, you can sort of sieve those good layers out as well. If I want to go ahead even further, I can use some of these filters. So let's say I want to look at pain points. Okay, and this is going to quickly give me an overview of like where are the different pain points in my journey. And I think it gives it a really great like overview, and it gives my research a lot of layers. Earlier on, we also did the sentiments thing. So you can also, let me see. You can also color it by sentiments. So red for negative sentiments, green for positive moments. So you can kind of see like as the user goes along in their journey, where are some of the positive and negatives. Yeah. So yeah, I really love this tool. I think it's great for synthesis. It's great for like research repository. And yeah, you can even use this piece to like start presenting very high level stuff to your stakeholders, right? You don't have to come up with an end-to-end research report. Yeah. Okay, so that's a bit of the power of Notably. One last thing I like to show is once you sort of have all your insights here, there's another cool thing which you can do is you want AI to then give you some thematic insights as well. You can just say, I'm going to choose all the data that I have on this board, and I want to use the entire project. And what I'll do is just pop over to what I have already. Okay. So these are some stuff that I've already used the GenAI to kind of come up with. Okay. So yeah, it's going to start giving you some themes, like high-level themes, which is what we always love. And I think what's really cool as well is it starts to like draw out some opportunity statements. I always have trouble coming out with how might we statements, so I think this is great. And what's cool about this tool is you can also go in and tweak it, add stuff, remove stuff, right? Give it own flavor, if you will. Yeah. So that's notably, I think it's a really powerful tool. If you can, you can try it out yourselves. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go on to my next tool. Oops, sorry. Okay, got it. Okay, so the next one is also a research tool. I think by now y'all can see how much I love research. This one is called user evaluation. I think this one's a lot more simple and streamlined. It's as great as notably, perhaps not as powerful, but its key kind of thing that it's great for is insight summary. So if I pop over to the tool here, okay, you can see the UI is not that nice, as notably, but it's still a good tool. What you have here is, again, I've put in my videos and the clips, and it's already come up with the transcriptions for me. I can head over to Insights then. And as it generates the transcripts, it's also going to come up with some AI thematic insights as well. So you can see it's done like key insights at very high level. It's also done pain points as well as some delighters. If I want a bit more, I can go in again and I can say, hey, like, give me some opportunity areas or other templates that I can use. Okay, and it's really simple. You have basically what the AI has interpreted from your transcripts, but you also have your source. So again, you can go back to play the context from the source video or whatnot. And if you don't like it, you can delete it, okay? And once you have sort of collated all of this, you can then add it to your collection, so to speak. So think of like adding to collection as I want to translate it into like a sticky note, right? So if I go ahead to the collection, this is what I'll see. You can kind of treat it like a Trello board. It's not as nice as the mural notably kind of display, but I think it still works. You can, move your stickies around. You can give it like specific themes that you want to assign to it. And if you don't like this, you can always have the option of exporting it to Miro. It's a bit troublesome. You have to download it as a CSV and then you copy and paste and then it goes to Miro, but it still works. One thing that I think is quite cool is sort of this conversational interface that is within user evaluation. So just like if you go to ChatGPT, you ask it a question, it will generate some content for you. So over here, I've tried sort of like, from the research that I have, all the videos that I've uploaded, the transcripts, what are some of the top pain points? And this is what it generated for me. So it basically will list down all the top pain points that you have. You can also look at it from maybe like, I want to look at it from an opportunity areas. What are some of the opportunity areas? So it starts giving you like, okay, here's the issue. Maybe you can, some suggestions for improvement and things like this. Yeah, so all in all, I think these are two really great tools you can try out. I would say it's definitely sped up some of my research process, especially with the transcriptions. They're really helpful. Yes, you do have to be careful not to be too reliant on some of these tools. So I would caveat that, always fact check whatever the AI has generated for you. Try not to be too complacent with using some of these tools. But again, I think, yeah, it really like has given sort of this experience. Yeah, it's a really great experience for me. Okay, so just going back to where we were. Oops. Okay. Okay, so now we come over to designing and delivering. So the next piece that we're going to introduce to you is Gembot. So this is actually a plugin in Figma. I think some people might have used it, and it's really great for like rapid ideation. Its killer feature is sort of this mind map brainstorm. So you tried Miro, it's quite similar, but I think this, like, again, has even more layers to it. Yeah. So if you want to bring this up on FigJam, it's actually a widget. So you can actually pop it up here. Okay, for some reason it's not working for me. But yeah, you can see where my mouse is. It's a bit small, but that's where the Jamboard widget is. Usually I can just search and it'll come up. What's really good about it is there are a few different kind of things you can do around with Jamboard. So I think the top thing I really love is that you can just ask it to like quickly ideate a few things for you. You can ask it quick questions. So just an example of how you can potentially use this, right, is let's say going back to the whole idea of an app of mindfulness, I can say, hey, I need ideas for an app that promotes mindfulness. If I go ahead and click on ideate, then it's going to come up with, some of these cool ideas for me. And it's around an app basically. Gives me some like cute names, some names a bit off, but it's okay. And then maybe now, I want to go into like, hey, what are some factors I need to consider when I'm designing a mindfulness app? So once you pop that question in, it can generate something like this for you. So maybe some factors that you want to consider are accessibility, user friendliness, and then, user control, preferences, and needs. Let's say I still want to explore some more. I want to go into specific topics. I can go into what we call a rabbit hole. And I can pick a few maybe topics of interest that I want. And it will actually generate like even more of some of these ideas for me. And let's say I really, really love some of these ideas. I'll now like to like maybe share it with my stakeholder, or I'd like to sort of give that app a layer of like, hey, a mindfulness app should be friendly, it should be comforting, sort of like, can you craft this in a tone of like sounding like my best friend? So this is what it came up with. So it's in a really friendly language, helpful language even. And there's other things that you can do as well. Yeah. Again, you can ask, what are some biggest opportunities for this app? And it will generate something like this. If it's too lengthy, I can go like, hey, I maybe summarize it in a few bullet points, or is it too long? Don't read. So this is what I came up with. Again, maybe I want to like tell a brand story, or, do a bit of storytelling in my app. I can say, hey, turn it into like a story. And then it came up with once upon a time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I think Jamboard is really great for like, if again, you're stuck, you need some inspiration, you need some quick ideas to run with. This is a pretty good tool. You might want to be careful around using it in workshops as a whole, because you want your participants to also give you ideas. You don't want to be too reliant on this. Yeah, but I think it's a cool tool if, you're stuck in a brain jam and you need something to like kick it off. Okay, so that's Jamboard. I've one more tool before I hand over to Jeremy, so I'm just going to go into that. Okay, so the last one that I have is UIUX. I think it's something that some of us might have heard of before. It's really something that it's like text design. You put in a prompt and it's able to come up with some key screens for you. And it also has like a sort of like simple prototyping mechanism in there. So okay, so this is how you can use it. Let's say I want to go back to maybe pick one of these how might be's to generate something. Okay, and I can even select like the device. Say it's a mobile device. I put in my example. I've also put in like the design style that I want it to look like. Maybe it's also a light theme. I want it to be young, and I can go ahead and generate my project. Okay, so again, this all takes a while. for stuff to happen. So we'll just wait for a bit. Okay, and you can see it's sort of turning out those screens quite quickly. Okay, so very layman title, accessible travel. Okay, says travel with ease and confidence. So it has your typical like login screen, what your potential like home screen could look like. Okay, and it also has like if you want to search for accessible options, this is what like accessible cafe could look like. Maybe you could even find out the timings that you could go. If you're looking for accessible like Airbnb, it also shows that you can modify the booking. Maybe a map view, right? That shows you all the accessible activities, locations that you can go to. Okay, so what this does is it really generates something really quickly and fast for you. I know it's not a refined design that you're going to end up using and yeah, going ahead with. But again, it gives you like some ideas which you can play with. If you know you have a stakeholder that you need to present something again really quickly with, you can just pop this into like a deck beforehand, right? And then just use this. Earlier on, I said that it also has some very like simple prototyping capabilities. So if you want to present this, you can simply, yeah, it's really got some of the stuff linked up. Okay. Yeah. So again, you might not end up using this as your final design. I think definitely not. But you can take this and go and refine it. It gives you some ideas for what you can play around with. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that is all for what I have to share. I'm going to hand over the time now to Jeremy, who's going to be talking a bit more about the next tool called Story Spinner.
Hello, everyone. So before I go into explaining this, I just want to give you a bit of context because I think context matters. Question for you guys would be how many of you have been involved in agile software development projects? I'm going to guess the majority of you or everyone. And then, so we do a lot of that here, right? So we develop a lot of software, a lot of different clients. One of our pain points that we have is one of the challenges that we have is when we go into a project, we go through a standard set of processes, discovery, ideation, build, test, deployment, whatever, right? After discovery, how do the engineers know what to build, right? They have a backlog. Well, if you haven't got a backlog, you need to build that backlog. Someone needs to put that together. And if you don't have that backlog, you have to go away with the team to gather those requirements, understand them, understanding who the users are, what the scope is, all of that jazz that you're familiar with software development. And that can take, many hours, many weeks. And so what tends to happen is the team will maybe start the beginning of that backlog. They'll take that and they'll go, okay, I've got enough stories. Let's just build the bits that we can. And then they'll rush through it because it's, tedious to write a user story in full, right? Because you might have a set of standards that you want to comply to, a definition of ready. And it takes a long time. And people cut corners, all right? So they're like, okay, look, you know what? Doesn't matter. Let's just put a story in the backlog, put a few bullet points in there. Can you go and build it, please? All right. And so what we did is look at that problem and build it all in-house to essentially solve that issue. And that's where Story Spinner comes from. So what you're looking at here is just the flow of what are basically AI agents. So these are autonomous software components that basically take scope, user interviews, context, maybe some personas that you have or specific users that you want to target. And then let me just switch over to the actual tool here. So, okay, I'm going to zoom in as much as possible because I know that's very screens, even though it's quite a big screen. I know that some of you are quite far away. In this example I'm going to show you, this is obviously a very simple project brief. And the project brief here is, I'll read it out to you. Given this website, paloit.com, make it more appealing to people interested in sustainability. So the question is, if you were to do that as a project team, what would you do to build a backlog, right? So you go, okay, well, what kind of users would you need? Because when you create user stories, you need to figure out, okay, who are the users of those stories? So you have a user story in the backlog, you need to know who is going to be the user of that particular feature. And so we basically have an AI agent here that looks at the scope. So the scope here, again, is a very simple project brief. Then we bring it into user persona generator, essentially, an AI agent that looks at the project scope. And again, that project scope could be technical specifications, scope, user interviews, anything else that you might want to add in. And it goes off and generates a list of user personas. And this is very, very small, but I'm going to read out maybe one of them. There's a sustainability consultant with skills, an education in environmental science. They're in San Francisco here. And their goal is to find innovative solutions for sustainability, and it's got some background as well on them. So what happens is those user personas get generated and then passed into the what I call the basic user story generator. And so that what that does is it looks at the scope and then builds out a list of user stories based on that scope. So this is that list of user stories. I won't go into every single one, but essentially it's listed those out based on the user personas that it's generated before. And then what happens is what we found is, and you may have found this yourself when you've used, for example, ChatGPT. If you generate content, it might be wrong, but it doesn't know it's wrong, and it's confidently wrong. It will tell you that this is the solution to your problem, this is the answer, but when obviously when you read through it, it's hallucinating and it's produced an incorrect answer. So what we did to solve that problem is to have another AI agent which actually checks the output from the other agent. So it goes, okay, thanks for the user stories. Can you improve them? And so what that user, what we call a reviewer agent does, it has a set of criteria, and that criteria is to basically take in the user stories, review them against a checklist of quality gates, and then it provides essentially a set of recommendations for improvement. And that's what this reviewer agent does here. So if I can try and zoom in here a little bit. So the first user story that got generated before was, as a sustainability consultant, I want to see a dedicated section on the website showcasing innovative solutions for sustainability. And the reviewer agent has said, okay, here's some improvements that you can make to this user story, specify the format of the case studies, white papers, success stories, etc. Make it clear whether resources are free or paid, include a feature to filter or sort the resources by industry, solution type, or other relevant criteria. I won't go to every single one. And then essentially it combines the output from the reviewer agent and the original one, and then produces essentially a fully fleshed out user story based on a template. So here, I know it's very small, but I'll read it out. The fields, I said, look, you have to generate a title, you have to have a description, you have to have the acceptance criteria, you have to have tasks, you have to give me a complexity and also the reason for that complexity. And so that's what it's produced for every single story. And then what we then do is essentially we can export that to something like Jira. And so now if I look at Jira, this is an example of an output from that tool. It can upload, and basically every single story you see here is generated from that scope that we put in the first place. So the title is derived from the description, so you don't have to actually write the title yourself because it's summarized that and put it into an understandable title, and so that saves a lot of time there, and also the summary as well. It has listed acceptance criteria which you may or may not skip, and it's also fleshed it out to a quality gate that has been set by the reviewer agent. These stories here don't contain the complexity but those could as well. Because it's modular, what we can also do is take the output from those stories and pass them into another agent, which then produces example HTML and JavaScript for that. So for example, if you wanted to implement that in terms of code generation, you could do that. Or if it was, for example, to produce a design, you could pass that to another agent that produces an actual visual design. Also, because it's just agent to agent, what we can do then is say, hey, given the set of criteria that you have for each story, can you tell me a set of test cases that I might need to implement to be able to make sure that a tester could actually verify each of those in the real world? And so what this basically ends up being is that you have a backlog from day one from a scope. It doesn't mean that you would send that over to a engineering team to implement straight away. What it means, though, is that the engineering team can go into backlog refinement from day one and start making sure that it complies to the requirements and everything that you might have. So, and also because it's driven by the scope that you provided. So if you have enough documentation, PDFs, user interviews, et cetera, you can provide that upfront and make sure that actually all the user stories have the scope that is required, so you wouldn't necessarily miss anything. It's quite a quick one. I won't go through the whole thing, but essentially that's what this does, and that allows us to essentially generate a backlog like this. So this entire backlog that you're seeing here, for example, is generated. This one has test cases, et cetera. Let's go back here. Ethical considerations. Do you want to go over practical tips now or ethical considerations? Okay. So the thing is, so I head up the data and AI team here, right? So I look at it not just from a UX perspective, but I just want to maybe highlight some areas. So there's some words in here. Funnily enough, these were generated from an LLM, not ChatGPT. We host our own ones here. And these are the things that actually come up quite a lot when we talk to clients. So fairness and bias is an interesting one, because the content that's generated from AI right now is based on the quality and the amount of the data that you train a model on. So essentially garbage in, garbage out, but also if you only have a certain number of options, those are the only options that come out. They're going to come out the other end. If I asked you what's your favorite food, and I said, okay, your options are, burgers, chips, and pizza, right? Pick one of the three. You might pick one, but it wouldn't necessarily be a healthy selection, right? It would be one of the selection of the three that I've given you. The output from AI would be generated from the content that you put in there. We don't know. If you don't know where the data is coming from or what kind of data has been put in there, when it generates that content, you don't know whether it's skewed towards a certain demographic or a certain set of users. Maybe it's not taking into account certain, geographical locations around the world, et cetera, right? So as a human, you would, I guess, want to make sure that when you're looking at from a UX point of view, you make sure that your system is accessible and usable by your users. But the AI doesn't really care as much. It will just generate based on the information that it has. Transparency is the same, along the same lines. If you don't know where the data is coming from, you don't know, how it's gonna, or how fair it is, right? So you want to know what the model has been trained on. In the case of for example, generating images. So we talked about text just here most of the time, but if you're generating images, you want to make sure you know where the source data is coming from. Are you using, for example, images that are not public IP, all right, not copyright free? If that's the case, do you have a license to use them? If you don't know where the data is being trained on, where it's come from, then you can't answer that question. Services from, for example, Microsoft, OpenAI with DALL-E, or even Adobe, when you use Photoshop now, you can generate content from it via a prompt. They will provide legal backing and a guarantee, if you like, that the images that are generated from their systems are you're able to use that in a variety of different use cases. Whereas if you go to an open source model, you have no idea where the data came from. They might list it, they might not. But I think it's important for you to, if you're going to do that, to know where the training data has come from. Otherwise, you might end up generating some images or text that are essentially going to open you up to a legal problem. So privacy and security was touched on earlier, but so when you're using ChatGPT, if you're using the free one, it's not free for them to run it. So why are they giving you it for free? So they are necessarily using your prompts to capture and then train and improve their own model, right? So your information, just as anything, if it's free, then whatever you're producing is the cost, right? So your input into that system will improve it over time, which is fine if you're maybe asking a question that is doesn't infringe on any IP or NDA. But let's say, for example, you upload a client document that you've signed an NDA for, and then it's generated content from it. Now you've sent that over to some other system and you have no idea where it's gone. It's probably a good idea for you to find out where you're sending it. Consent, again, same thing, right? If you're sending that data over, is it being stored in the server somewhere before it's processed? Is it being used to train the model? How do you know that once you've sent it up there, that when it generates, so remember I said that the output from that model is from the data that you input into it. How do you know that in the future, part of that data that you've sent or uploaded isn't going to be used or actually going to come out the other end of someone else's prompt, right? And then legal compliance, I touched on that briefly just now about using copyrighted images and IP infringement. You want to make sure that so in terms of images, obviously that's easy to kind of you want to make sure you have the clearance to use it. In terms of code, if it's generating code, you want to know that perhaps if you're using a code generation model, that the code is cleared for public use. If you're uploading or using it for a private repository or data that shouldn't go anywhere, you want to make sure that's not going out anywhere. I think I'll stop there. And you back.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, so yeah, I think we shared a bunch of stuff with you, whether it's tools and also from the ethical angle, what are some of the considerations we have to bear in mind when we're using AI. So I guess the next step is to sort of plant that seed here with you guys and think about how we can then start using AI, or where can we start using AI, right? So we came up with 3 kind of prompts to help you think about how you can do that. I think simply put, one is, think of what's already available. Some of the tools we share with you, there's way more. If you know of any other tools, go ahead and try and experiment it. That's the best way to find out if it works for you or not. The second one would be to kind of think of task, right, where AI can be autonomous. So we know AI still has a lot of limitations, can't do everything end to end for us. So what I mean with an example could be like, think of when you do competitors analysis, right? If I'm trying to find out what my competitors are, I can just put it into ChatGPT and it will just generate some of the top competitors for me. On my end, I don't really have to do much. The AI is working sort of autonomously for me. And then if I want to go ahead and maybe, kind of do maybe more like a SWOT analysis, the same thing. A SWOT analysis is a framework that's widely known, it's really available. I can just go ahead and ask the AI to then put all my competitors and create some SWOT analysis for me. So again, it's autonomous. But then when it comes to maybe if I want to do a bit of like cross-market analysis, that's a bit more of where, AI can't exactly do it for me. There's sort of that balance where I have to come in and also look at the data and make that judgment for myself. Okay, and last but not least, I think it's also great if we can think of the mundane stuff that we really don't like doing, but it's a lot of like high effort for us, right? For example, like before 𝙤𝙪𝙪𝙤𝙪 or all these AI tools came up, I think we can all remember the painful days where we had to like word for word listen to recordings and transcribe everything, right? But now we have AI to do that for us. The other thing that I know that a lot of us designers hate is like coming up with like proposal decks, right? So maybe if you can use an AI to generate some of these stuff for you, you can then focus your attention on, you know, stuff that is a bit more important. Yeah, so just 3 prompts to sort of think about. We also like to share some tips when it comes to assessing tools. So this is just based on our own experience and what we think might be good for you guys to take away from is, you know, there are so many tools out there. How do you know what is right? What is going to be the best fit for you or your organization? I think the first thing is to be intentional with testing the tools. You have to have that kind of open mindset when you go in testing these tools, right? And something that we've done at PALO is we've sort of created a repository of all these tools. So it makes it very accessible for any of our designers to go in and look at, hey, if I'm now at like ideation stage, what is the appropriate tool for me to use? If I'm now at like research, you know, what tools is out there, what have my other designers tested, and maybe I can try it out too. We also want to create sort of the environment of like sharing. So over at PALO, we also have what we call like design hive meetings that we have. In fact, we had one earlier today. So oftentimes we use that as a platform to share like tips or learnings. So we also figured that would be a great way for, you know, our designers to come back and also share their experiences with some of the tools they use. I think the second one is considering your environment and the risk. And what I mean by this is if you think of a brand new tool you've never used before, it's probably going to be very high risk if you're trying that tool out for the first time on a live project, right? If anything fails, if the tool doesn't work for you, you're going to have to revert back to like your manual way of doing things. So perhaps if this is the first time you're interacting with a tool, try not to use it on a live project that you've never tested it with. You can always do like a post study, right? Like let's say you've already done something in the past, you can use that same set of data to then test it with the AI and see what's the outcome. Yeah, so kind of think of like in this stage now, can I afford to fail? And last but not least, I think it's also important to set clear metrics. Kind of figure out like when you're using the tool, what you're trying to achieve. I think AI often, you know, we kind of see it as like, oh, it's going to make my processes more efficient and things like this. So for example, I recently worked with my client and they have developed sort of like this AI tool where it can synthesize a lot of the client's feedback. So we want to test it against sort of like the manual process where people have to extract sort of the insights and go through that and then clean the data and then, you know, kind of cluster it themselves. So what we did was a simple diary study with our users. So we first had them kind of capture all of these metrics using that manual process and then subsequently use that same approach while they're using the AI tool. And I think it's a good point if you're trying to get your business stakeholders to buy in and procure tools, because once they see like, oh my gosh, you save like, you know, 2-3 hours, they'll be like, okay, this is probably a good kind of thing to take interest in, and yeah, it's a great way to get buy-in. I think it's also the important thing about like how AI has inaccuracies and bias. So you always want to also fact check whatever output that AI is giving you. And it's always a good way to do that against, you know, whatever manual data you already have. Yeah. So those are some tips. I think we've come close to the end of the session. We'll be moving to the Q&A soon. But before we go into that, one more thing we want to sort of throw out to the audience is there's this thing called the AI maturity matrix. So it sort of layers out to show sort of like where do you think your organization sits. So yeah, we like to find out from the audience, right? You are from very diverse backgrounds. Where do you think your organization falls in? And perhaps it will be interesting to see it sort of like in a poll. So what we have set up is a Mentimeter. You can go ahead, either scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and put in that number. And then, yeah, just indicate where do you think you fall on this sort of scale, right? So with awareness, it's the very first stage. Maybe you have an interest in AI, but you're not sure yet, you've not experimented yet. The second step would be like active. Maybe you started experimenting with some of these tools, getting into the groove. Then there's that operational stage where it's, hey, maybe now I'm actively using a bunch of tools. I am seeing that AI can help me create a lot of value. And then as we move up the chain, it's like more like systemic. Maybe it's already embedded in your digital processes. And you've used AI to like generate some of these digital business models. The last one is probably if you're IBM or Microsoft and it's, AI is part of that DNA. Okay, so I'm just going to hop over to see what some of the responses are. Very curious to see where sort of everyone falls under. Okay, I think we have like about 17 responses so far. Yeah, a few of us say that we're sort of like in the active area. I would think there's still a bit more responses we can wait to see come in. Hey, I see the poll going up. Yeah, I think most of us would fall under like the active stage where we've begun to explore some of the tools. I'm also seeing some people have it in the operational stage. Not sure if you're comfortable enough. Would anyone like to share maybe a bit about like where you're from or what you guys have been doing? I think it'll be interesting to see what other designers are doing as well. Oh, I saw someone put like systemic. Yeah. Would anyone be like keen to just share a bit about, where you're from or what you've been doing and how you've been using AI? Yeah, I'm curious about the systemic one as well. Any brave soul would like to share? Okay, if not, we can always keep it to like post conversation. If you're more comfortable sharing it post the session and mingling around, that's fine as well. But yeah, I think it's just interesting to see sort of like where we all fall under. Yeah, I would say like PALO kind of falls between like active and operational as well. I think AI is still something that we are getting used to and are trying to use more actively as well. Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on now to the Q&A. So early on, we said that we've opened up the Q&A and you are free to put in whatever questions you want to ask. So yeah, again, using Mentimeter, either scan the QR code or you can go to menti.com and then put in the number at the top. And then, yeah, we'll see if there's any questions. Or if anyone is comfortable, you can just ask the question straight up, like raise your hand, and then I think Chris will come over to you with a mic, for the question. Okay, if not, we'll just give a few moments for questions to come in. Hi, yeah.
Okay, so those two websites that you introduced earlier, right, where you could put videos in and they will transcribe the whole thing. I'm just curious, how good is it at translating local dialects and like accents into a transcribed script that is easy to read without all the laws inside as well? Or will it just edit in anyway?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Definitely in the Singapore context, is very, very important. From what I can see is, I mean, with these tools, you have to bear in mind that they're not 100% accurate. Even if we take away the very strong Singaporean accent or the Singlish, the transcription tools can never be 100%. Across like the different ones like 𝙤𝙪𝙩𝙤𝙤, which is a pure transcription tool. I think we see Dovetail, a few of these other tools. I would say maybe like 80% accurate, and a good day is 90%. I think your audio quality matters as well, right? So if you set it up in a proper environment, soundproof, everything, I think the transcripts work quite well. But yeah, again, going back to the point of like never being too dependent on AI tools, you still have that obligation to go in and like, you know, listen a bit and check and play some snippets lah. Yeah, I've been there where I've been a bit complacent, and then I realized, oh my gosh, the transcription tool actually missed out this whole chunk. So I would say that actually while you're doing research, it's also a good habit to still scribe, you know, a few notes on the side, so you at least can have some of the key points already captured. Yeah, so yeah, hope that answers the question. Thanks for being the brave soul and asking the first question. Yeah, okay. I think we have another question here. How do you decide on which tool to use during defined stage, example, notably versus user evaluation? Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, for whether it's notably or user evaluation, this is a hard one. I think with notably, there's a bit of a steeper learning curve. Like it takes you a while to get used to the tools and figure out the features and the functions. But once you get there, I think, you know, it's pretty smooth sailing. With user evaluation, I would say that when it's also on how they like give you the AI insights. With user evaluation, it's really more like they take a transcript and more or less line by line, they give you like those insights. So it's quite granular, like the stuff that you're getting from user evaluation. Notably, if you saw earlier, it summarizes based on a certain like template, right? So it's really very summary level, which is more like maybe a bit more thematic in that sense. So it really depends on like, you know, I think experiment with it and see like what works best for your workflows. Because notably, it has the advantage of being like a full end-to-end research tool, which you can store all your research stuff in there. You can have your synthesis board. Whereas with user evaluation, you still have to have that point where, you know, you kind of port it out to Miro to synthesize. Yeah, so there's like pros and cons, but I would say like those tools are definitely on my list of tools I would use for research. Yeah, so hope that again answers the question. We'll go on to the next question now. Okay. What even is the point of synthetic users? Fake data just leads to misleading insights and conclusions. Okay, great question. Wei.
I think this is a very interesting question because when I first started exploring synthetic user, there's a heated debate on LinkedIn. And there was this UX practitioner who has been in this industry for many, many years, who just vented and say, I would never use synthetic user. Like that's such a humiliation to my, profession, something along that line. And I remember the founder of Synthetic User actually responded to that thread. And he was like, you can keep an open mind and just test out the tools. If you haven't even tested out the tools and experimented with it, what sort of evidence you have to be so kind of passionately against it, right? So I think that is when you have a new tool out, and then the data are supposedly modeled based on a large amount of, it's actually powered by some engine that it's supposed to simulate the characteristic of users. So at least that's what they claim to do. And I think we would still suggest that you can try it out. And if you feel that the insights and the data generated by it is really not cutting it for you, then don't have to rely on it. But like I mentioned, what I like about the tool and where I do see the value is that it gives you the general context of how the user is facing the problem and how you could actually help them. A lot of the additional thought will be filled in by yourself and can only be executed by talking to the real user. But for me, this one serves as just a starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Louis. I think I'd add on to like synthetic user. It's a great tool to create hypotheses, right? Like sometimes you don't even know your target audience. Your target audience is hard to reach, or your market is I can't reach them, right? So it's a great point to maybe get some of these prompts out using synthetic users, and then obviously subsequently you still want to test with real users if possible, or as close to your user that you can get. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But thanks for that question. I think we have one more question. Okay, so yeah, have you ever come across or tested out any good AI tool for usability testing? I think I can take this one. Yeah. So yeah, I think usability testing AI tools, we've not actually tested any one out just yet. But recently I saw a LinkedIn article and someone compiled a list of tools, and there are a bunch of usability tools on there, but I would say I've not tested them. But for example, if I were to use notably or synthetic users, I would say it's not very good for usability testing, right? As you all know, how usability testing works is, more or less your users actually interacting with a digital device or platform. And more often than not, they're not speaking, even though you say, think aloud, think aloud, think aloud, but they don't. So yeah, obviously the tool, it doesn't have like facial recognition or is able to like, find out all these behaviors. So I think for usability testing, I've not come across or personally used a tool before. But yeah, if you're interested, I have a screenshot of the usability tool that someone put a list on. So yeah, I can share that. But yeah, personally, I've not tested one that can be used for usability testing. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's also a little bit more challenging in selecting an AI tool for usability testing because, as we all know, AI tools are very good with text and images, but then it doesn't have eyes and it doesn't see what the user is looking at. So for usability testing, oftentimes we need to know what the user is clicking on and then what they are like frowning upon or what they are smoothly navigating through or what they are having problem with. But then with AI tools, I think at least at this point, maybe that's an area they're lacking in capability, which is why, we haven't really tried too much in this because we see it as a limitation at this point.
Hey, thanks for that question as well. Okay, we'll move on. Oops. Okay, I think this is the last question. Did I answer this one already? Okay, I think we've actually gone through. Oh, okay, I missed this one. Okay. With the introduction of AI tools in the discovery phase, what would you say are the manual work done in your new workflow? Okay, I'm assuming that this means once I've adopted AI tool, what is still needed as like manual work that's still needed lah, right? I would say that for this one, it's more of like fact checking whatever the AI has put in. And then it's also sort of like you still have to sort of go in and maybe like when you're creating a report, it still requires that manual output from my end. I think the way you present or storytell some of the findings is still probably, where the human interaction will come in. And yeah, I would say the main bulk of it is still actually conducting the user interviews or whatever study you're doing, and then putting that in, and then fact checking sort of what the AI has put in there. Yeah. Anything you want to share?
I think one of the benefit of using AI tool is that it does free ourselves a bit more in doing the truly value adding work. So let's say if you're working in an agency, then you have more time to talk to your clients and really probe them a bit more on why are you looking at this particular problem? What is the meaning of it to your business, right? And then you can take whatever they have given to you and prompt the AI so that it can generate certain script for you or generate certain ideas for you. But your connection with the client or your FaceTime with your end users can actually increase, or at least you are being more productive when you are working together with them. So I would say that still the aspect of manual work still exists, but then you probably have more quality in that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Wei. Okay, I think we have one more that just came in. Okay, no, this was the same as the first one. Okay, I think we've covered all the questions already. It seems like, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think that's the end of our session today. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to just hang back and yeah, just mingle around, and we'll also be around if you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask us. Yeah, but thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope that it was insightful and useful and helpful. Yeah, thank you again.